The book of Revelation is a love story. You wouldn't think so when you first read it, not with all the mind-blowing events happening to the earth and the supernatural creatures bringing them on, with a dragon and beasts, armored locusts and armies and so much suffering and death. But it is the love story of Jesus and his bride, the church, a marriage made in heaven. Not as easily recognizable as your average love story, and of course it isn't average, it is extraordinary. The book is extraordinary, complex, weird and absolutely wonderful. It opens doors that no one can shut, and it gives us glimpses of an awesome God with a power beyond our comprehension. The book turns our world upside down, figuratively and literally. It ends the world as we know it and introduces new dimensions that we only find in films. But this book was written 2,000 years ago. The book of Revelation is a letter to the church of all ages, a letter containing prophecies to be studied by the churches so that they can prepare themselves for what is coming, the apocalypse. First, there are other letters, 7 letters to 7 churches. These letters in chapters 2 and 3 are read and studied by many churches, but the rest of the book hardly gets looked at, perhaps because it is packed with imagery and symbols, almost like God is telling his children a fairy tale with monsters and miracles, and we feel too grown up and intelligent to listen to that, let alone take it to heart. Here is the book in a nutshell. The visions about the apocalypse come in 3 main events and a few subplots. The main events are: the opening of 7 seals on a scroll gives us a glimpse into the future. Every time a seal is opened, something happens. 7 trumpets are sounded by 7 angels, and each time a spectacular event takes place in nature. The pouring out of 7 bowls with plagues by another 7 angels that bring the end times. Halfway through the book, Satan, here named the dragon, is thrown out of heaven and earth becomes a much darker place. He has 2 helpers, 2 beasts, and he establishes his throne on earth. A godless city called Babylon becomes the home for merciless trading in excessive luxuries. Not just godless, Babylon hates anything to do with God. She drinks the blood of the martyrs and rides the 7-headed beast that is covered in blasphemies. This is why the churches need the letters to strengthen themselves so they won't succumb, and why they need the whole book so that they will recognize what they are up against. John, a follower of Jesus who has been exiled to the island of Patmos, gets visions that he has to write down. He hears a voice behind him and, when he looks round, he sees Jesus walking among 7 golden lampstands. These lampstands, says Jesus, are the 7 churches. Jesus tells John to write to them and dictates a letter to each of them. The letters start in a way that gets the church's full attention immediately. In the middle of each letter, Jesus holds up a mirror to each church and throws a light on its strengths and weaknesses, so she can prepare for what is coming. The letters end with the well-known sentence, "He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches." These are the love letters of the bridegroom to his bride. They will be a light on her path to her wedding feast. After chapters 2 and 3, we hear about the churches indirectly in the book. We hear how after the opening of the first 6 seals of the scroll, people get a mysterious seal from an angel on their foreheads that will separate them from people who carry the sign of the beast. We hear that one of the churches, Philadelphia, will be spared the disasters that will hit the world. We hear about people who are blessed with a special happiness, a light in their heart, the so-called Beatitudes. We hear quite a lot about people who have already died. They have a voice in heaven. Altogether, they make up the Church of all ages, the Bride of God, or, as she is called in the book of Revelation, the Bride of the Lamb, Jesus. My intention was to have the little light points that are made by the lamps of the churches and beatitudes to run through the painting, from the flames on the lampstands in the left-hand corner to the bride and bridegroom in the top right-hand corner, like the veil of the bride. When I started to read the book from the beginning, I only got to verse 3 when I bumped into a beatitude. Beatitudes are groups of people who are blessed with a divine happiness for one reason or another, like the ones in Matthew, where Jesus says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." But also, "Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me." A church could be persecuted because of what she believed, but she would still experience intense happiness. I found 6 more beatitudes in Revelation. The first is right at the beginning of the book. The second appears in chapter 14, over halfway through the book. The third in chapter 16. They seem to come faster towards the end. It is as if God wants to encourage his children as life on earth becomes more difficult. The last 4 beatitudes are in the last 3 chapters. There are 22 chapters. The first beatitude says, "Blessed is the one who reads the words of this prophecy, and blessed are those who hear it and take to heart what is written in it, because the time is near." Here is the first beatitude translated into a painting, like a woman reading a book. Her face is turned up to heaven. She lets the words from the book she is holding enter her heart. Some words pierce her heart like a sword, but they don't hurt her. Her face lights up. She sits in front of a large clock face with her hands at a few minutes before 12. The time is near. She lifts her head and opens her heart. The penny drops. Dark shapes fall off her shoulders. Eternity, outside the clock, in the top left-hand corner, is full of tiny, smiling faces and sparkles. Some of the jeweled gold leaf finds its way from heaven directly to her, undisturbed by the rush of time that is whirling past her. They are blessings. In the painting, I turned the first beatitude round so that she could fit in the corner. She now faces the whole book and makes a link with the 6th beatitude. Blessed are those who keep the words of this prophecy. All beatitudes appear in the triptych. Not all carry lamps. If I had painted in all people who carry a light, it would have taken all the darkness out of the painting, and the veil of the bride would have been very clear. But that would have given a very different impression of the book. Before I started on the triptych, I painted the churches individually. The churches in chapters 2 and 3 of Revelation are Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. They were under Roman occupation. While it gave me a little insight into what was going on historically, I found them refreshingly recognizable in their dealings with a politically correct society and how to survive and work in it. From the letters we understand that the churches were no saints, but Jesus describes them as light bearers, candle holders, and lampstands. They are called to be lights in a dark world. This is why I have painted the 7 sister churches as women holding lights, and here they carry lights in the rather dark setting of Babylon Square. The churches in Asia Minor were closely monitored by both Romans and Jews. Christianity was not an established religion yet. Every year there were festivals of emperor worship, where everybody had to participate and swear an oath that Caesar is Lord. This was not acceptable to the young Christian church, who believed that their Lord was the only Lord. For the church, the bride, to flirt with other gods while she was on her way to her wedding feast, where her bridegroom was waiting for her, wasn't on. Some Christians, as in Smyrna, were detested to the point of persecution, imprisonment, and even death. Here you see Smyrna in prison. The prison is part of the throne of the dragon. This is the dragon who has been thrown out of heaven. He hates everything that reminds him of the light in heaven, and he will spoil everything that carries that light or that is beautiful in nature. The dragon offers his throne to the seven-headed beast. The throne is the powerhouse of the dragon, and we see the gods of the dragon, the beasts and Babylon on the throne. Greed, gluttony, anger, pride, envy, laziness, lust. And the throne is made of money, with death's open mouth as an emblem on the back, and snakes as armrests. The beast comes out of the polluted waters of the sea, a sea of iniquity, a troubled sea, a sea of injustice. Smyrna is not carrying the sign of the beast that you need to have in order to trade or work, the infamous number 666. She has not given in to the forced religion of the beast of the earth, so she has been brought to her knees. Slander, lies, and poverty have put her in prison. She may be killed if it pleases the beast. But even behind the bars of the prison, her light is shining bright, and she wears the laurel crown, the crown of life. We see Ephesus on her way to the marketplace in the port. The dragon can be almost in front of her. Ephesus is not interested. She is on her way to do good. She lacks for nothing, disapproves of the right, or rather wrong, things, goes about her business in her perfectly correct way. Impervious to false news, gossip, or intimidation, love arrows also bounce off her, including her bridegroom's. She has lost her first love and has fallen in love with doing good works. Pergamum is coming down the steps of the beast's throne, the throne that the beast was given by the dragon. I know where you live, where Satan has his throne, says God at the beginning of the letter to Pergamum. Her light is in one hand, a book in the other. The church of Pergamum is like the city, with her famous library and her teaching hospital, standing firm in knowledge. But there are some in the church of Pergamum that see no evil in compromising and making life easier by going along with some of the other gods' festivals. A few jump onto the bandwagon that goes through the gate of Babylon. A snake-like ribbon spirals up Pergamum's dress. The dragon snakes its way around the steps and in and out of Babylon. Just down the steps of Pergamum we see Thyatira, surrounded by a crowd. She is handing out a white cloth to a beggar. Her lamp shines brightly. When we follow the light round, we see the second beatitude in the book carried by children. Chapter 14, verse 13. Happy are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Happy indeed, says the Spirit, for they rest from their labours, and their deeds go with them. People are rescued from the sea by those who are not kneeling for the statue of the beast. In the shadow of the massive figure of Babylon, in her scarlet and purple silk dress, Thyatira does her work. Thyatira is known as the city of the precious and sought-after purple cloth. There are many trades in Thyatira: tanners, potters, leather workers, dyers, wool and linen weavers, bronzesmiths, all with their own guilds. To be part of the working world, you had to be a member of a guild, which came with strings attached. For example, you had to attend its festivities, and these parties turned into real orgies. In the painting, the church is wrapped in purple cloth. She is bound by strings that hinder her movements, but she is more active than before. Jezebel, a self-professed prophetess in Thyatira's church, is behind her and tries to tempt her to come to a party. Jezebel knows how to get along in the world of the beast. God's patience with her is remarkable, but it is coming to an end. When John has his vision of Babylon, he is astonished. But Babylon's glitter does not bring delight and happiness to all. Her extreme greed and pride can take us all down in her fall. Babylon is what we call the tragedy of the commons. She represents the individuals who overexploit the gifts made for all, so the earth with all its treasures is depleted and spoiled. She acts according to her own self-interest and behaves contrary to the common good. All this show of strength, glitter and bravura does not bring safety for the weak, the poor, the elderly, the homeless and those in need. Although not in so many words, we find that the ship of fools in Babylon's harbour is in the book of Revelation, mainly in chapter 18, the fall of Babylon, and in the description of the goods that come to Babylon's market, and the short-sightedness of the traders and the kings of the earth, who are seduced by Babylon's intemperate lust and greed. Babylon's greed for luxury can never be stilled. Kings, merchants, sailors, wheelers and dealers, the fool and the money-windbag, they are all going into her, and the haunt of evil spirits she has become, and with them the slaves and the souls of men. The dragon snakes its way in between the gravestones. On one of these, Sardis seems to be asleep, unaware of the dangers around her. The town of Sardis was situated high upon a cliff, and she was confident that she couldn't be taken in easily by enemy forces. That gave her great confidence. A stream ran through the center of the city, which contained particles of gold. To have gold at your fingertips must be very distracting. Sardis felt safe. She was beautiful and rich. That feeling must have rubbed off on the church. Outside the town of Sardis was a large cemetery. The people of Sardis were very into death, what happens after death, the underworld and the spirits. In the letter to Sardis, Jesus introduces himself as he who holds the 7 stars and the 7 spirits in his hand. The road to hell is paved with gold. The church of Sardis sits beside the steps of gold that lead into the throne of the beast, that here is being plunged into darkness by the 5th angel emptying his bowl. It is time for Sardis to wake up. Otherwise, Jesus says, I will come like a thief, and you will know neither the time or the hour. Down in the marketplace, Laodicea is doing her business, standing where the trade roads cross and benefiting from the exchange rates. She is doing a roaring trade. The goods from the ship of fools are being brought into the market. At her stall, Laodicea sells her fine, soft black wool and fashionable garments, and her salve to cure earaches and eye problems. She feels confident and rich, but the winds are beginning to stir. Soon Babylon will fall, and the ground will give way from under her feet. Laodicea has her back turned to us. As a bride, the church of Laodicea has become the worst kind. She has become indifferent. God says, I know your deeds, that you are neither hot nor cold. I wish you were either one or the other. So, because you are lukewarm, I am to spit you out of my mouth. You say, I am rich. I have acquired wealth and do not need a thing. But you do not realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. Here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will go in and eat with them, and they with me. When the 7th angel throws the contents of the bowl into the air, an enormous earthquake happens, and hailstones like rocks fall from the sky. When Babylon falls, she loses everything. The music of harpists and musicians, flute players and trumpeters will never be heard in you again, says a mighty angel, nor any trade or the voice of bridegroom and bride. Blessed are those who are invited to the wedding supper of the Lamb. The fourth beatitude catches a falling harp to take with her to the celebrations. Philadelphia was the gateway for trade and the doorway to the rest of Asia. The church suffered little prejudice and restrictions, unlike her sister churches. Philadelphia's case is simple. The church is small, and the city stands in a volcanically active landscape with earthquakes. There is hardly room for temptation, because it is hard enough to survive and lead a normal life. Philadelphia holds God's hand, like a child holds its father's hand, and she holds on to her crown of life. Here she stands on the edge of the chasm caused by the earthquake that destroys Babylon. God promises the church in Philadelphia an open door that no one can close, and she will be spared the tribulations described in the book of Revelation. She is on her way to her wedding supper and to a home that God has built himself with heavenly materials. The New Jerusalem, the other city, built out of transparent gold, as an enormous cube it comes down from a new heaven to a new earth. The bride can enter through a gate that is made out of a single colossal pearl. An angel guards it. Nothing will ever spoil God's creation again. The river of life flows as clear as crystal through the city, with on either side the tree of life. The bride and her groom will live happily forever and ever. See, I am coming with the clouds, says the bridegroom at the beginning of the book of Revelation, and every eye will see me. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end.